welcome Dr. Sherry Campbell to the Unseen to Unstoppable Summit, essential strategies designed to create remarkable women who shine. And speaking of a remarkable woman who shines, I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome the beautiful and brilliant Dr. Sherry Campbell.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen. I love the title of this summit. So I'm really excited to dive in and help and inspire as many women as we can.
I'm excited for that too. Me being one of those women, that is one of the things that I shared with you in one of our calls that this was about me looking for women that have either gone through or they're just supporting other women that have gone through some of the things that I've gone through. And you do a lot of work around trauma and childhood trauma. And I appreciate your work so much. So the first question I have for you is, what does unseen to unstoppable personally mean to you?
I think the way that I grew up is I was very much hated by my mother. And but she adored my older brother. And she would dote on him and show me that she could do it. And to make sure that I knew there was an unspoken thing like, you're not going to get this. So I felt seen, but in the most unseen, cruel way. So her intent was to make me feel invisible, noxious, decrepit, and like I really didn't exist. And so being seen for me always made me feel bad, like I wanted to hide. But yet I did want her to see me and I did want her to love me, and no amount of me trying anything was able to turn any of that around. And so I had to learn, I went inside just naturally, and I got seen through other avenues like Little Orphan Annie, Hippie Longstocking, Punky Brewster, all these little girls that were like outcasted and alone. And I thought they were my heroes. So I found ways to be seen more through like an object than a mom, or my stuffed animals. I had a whole world in my mind of what was going on, and I had a vivid imagination. And so I pretended that I was seen by them, or I was making myself seen. And then as I've evolved, I did 4.5 decades of abuse with her and realized that that was a fight and a battle I could never win. The more I succeeded, the more angry and jealous she became. Me thinking the more I succeeded, the more I would be seen.
Right.
And so now I love that I'm not seen and I am unstoppable, because I feel seen now in being a mom myself, and in my work, and in my journals, and those things. So if you didn't get seen, like I did not get seen as a kid, or you experienced being seen as uncomfortable, because that's something too we can talk about, is that's an uncomfortable thing sometimes for me now. Like I'll be in an extroverted mood and I'll make plans, and then it's time for the plans and I'm like, I don't want to go. And then I have to battle this part of me. But I think that you can. I mean, in some way, trying to be seen by her made me very successful.
Yeah.
And the not getting it kept me going for the carrot. But now I'm not hungry for that carrot anymore.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Listen, I was so excited to get started with you and just hear your story that I'm like, oh, there's people that don't know you potentially. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
So I've kind of pioneered a movement on accident. I went no contact with my family. Well, they cut me off, and then I that was always the game. And then I decided I had no more time or tools to continue to mend the fence, continue to fix a fence I didn't break. And so now it's been 8.5 years, and there was quite a bit of torture in the first 4 years. The only thing that I ever found in the literature about cutting someone off was in a romantic partnership. There was nothing in the literature for adult survivors of emotionally abusive parents. And so I started writing the books, and I have now 3 books on toxic family. I just finished writing a workbook just a week ago. Now we're going to go through the editing of it, but I pioneered this movement not knowing. I knew it wasn't in the literature that I found, and now I've normalized no contact is a healthy decision to stop abuse and protect yourself. And I was able to do a TED Talk on it. So
Yeah.
amazing.
And if you haven't caught that TED Talk, catch it. It is so good. And Dr. Sherry has, I love the therapy sessions. I love that so much. And so yeah, she's got a huge following. If you haven't taken the time to get to know her, do yourself a favor. So then you kind of started to mention this a little bit, but how have you chosen to embody that transformation from unseen to unstoppable?
I think that my lifeline was a journal, and I continued throughout my whole life to have to write myself back into existence against a negative narrative. I don't know how people can survive without journaling, and I know many people don't journal, but for me, that was my lifeline. I could lose track of myself to the false narrative of what an evil monster I was and all the things that I was called by both parents, and write myself back into existence. And there's a lot of trauma in those journals, but it gave me a lifeline. I needed an anchor, I think. What I didn't realize until much later in my life is that the anchor was me. I was essentially writing back to myself. And once I kind of looked at it from that viewpoint, I'm like, I've done it all by myself. And I was pretty proud of myself that I could find myself in my darkest moments. It to me felt like the journal, like it was magic, or it was something like there was alchemy going on. And I had paper parents. So I turned to books and education to, if I needed calm, sound, rational advice, I certainly wasn't going to get it from my parents. So I found it in books, whether it was Little House on the Prairie, where I felt like I pretended I had a family, to any book I've ever read spiritually or psychologically. I got a PhD, did far too much reading for any human being. And then now I'm writing those books, right? So I had paper parents. I just think that there are ways to be resourceful and to learn to be articulate about what you need, not from parents if they're not available. There are ways, and I turned to information.
Well, and I would love to know there's a couple things. What are those ways? And let's go there first. What are those ways?
Well, for me, again, it was reading and journaling. Therapy became a big part of my life. And then I had a book can't really talk back to me, right? And I could talk back to myself in my journal, but I've had a wonderful therapist the past 10 years. And she tells me, I feel very maternal toward you. And I'm like, that is because I have a 4-year-old girl that wants a mom so bad. And it must translate into the therapy session. And I love hearing that someone feels maternal toward me like that, who knows my deepest wounds. And so also getting outside and breathing fresh air. I grew up in I did not grow up in California. I grew up in another state. And it was just very outdoorsy and green, and there was lots of space. Yeah. And I was able to exit my home and be amongst outside and grounded or active. I was an elite athlete, am an elite athlete, and getting outside and breathing got me back in my body, because I spent a lot of time out of my body, in my head, trying to protect myself or try not to beat myself up. So those are all ways. And I was just, reading saved my life in so many ways, because I needed information to figure out if I was bad, if it was me, and if it was, my God, I wanted to change. I don't want to be bad. It really helped me to find myself. It's true soul searching. Yeah. It's very much searching your soul.
Yeah, that's so good. So when you mentioned that you're a mom.
Yeah.
Me too. And how do you, what can I do? I'm going to come from me. What can I do so I don't pass the trauma that I went through, like it took me a long time to even realize, because I kind of figured out that, all right, like my parents did the best they could. And, like, so I never cut myself off from my parents. I just figured they did the best they could. And the people that were abusive to me, I didn't cut myself off from them. And I just figured, because I forgive them and I'm just going to go on with my life and they're forgiven. And then things in my life started manifesting with poor relationship choices and all the different things that I just didn't really realize how that trauma impacted me in adulthood. And now I am a mom to adult children who are now going through their own journey.
Yeah.
How, if there's those moms out there, or even with adult children, how do we not pass that on to them?
My love for my daughter would stand in direct opposition to ever harming her. And I just want to make note, like, I think there are very sadistic parents like mine and very other parents that are emotionally immature that are very self-centered and don't really have the insight to see that what they're doing is hurtful. And I think you can have like a nice, cordial, superficial, loving relationship with those parents, right? For people like me, I wasn't left with any other choice. If I wanted to survive my life, I was not going to do it with even a vein of that sadistic parenting coming into. One phone call would send me down the rabbit hole for a month. So I think my parents are unique in the fact that they're both very sociopathic. Okay. They're not emotionally immature, because cutting off should be your very last result. I was given no other choice if I wanted to really function.
Right.
So when I had my daughter, London, I was so madly in love with her. And looking at her and her innocence and her, her just angelic space, I would look at that and see my face and be like, how could someone hurt her? How could anyone look at that face and ever want to be cruel to her, ignore her, control her, hit her? Who could do that? I never focused on not being my parents. I always focused on how much I loved her. I didn't want to bring them even into the dynamic. I knew very young I was nothing like my family. I was a very different type of soul placed into a very low-level family. And I knew that I wasn't like them. And I said it for years. I mean, starting very young, I'm not like you. I'm not like you.
Right.
And they all fit and I didn't. So I thought I was bad or I was off, and they let me believe that, and they made me believe that. So I just saw her and I thought what a gift she was. And I didn't even bring them in. I just wanted to love her, give her the outside of a puzzle. And as she grew, that frame would grow. And I wanted to be her leader, not her parent. The word parent is so painful for me that I don't even like the word. So I don't even think about parenting. And maybe that really helped me, because that's burrowed in with so many core wounds for me that it's a bad word. So I look at it as I am her leader and she is my gift. She is my student. I'm here to love her unconditionally and teach her. She's 20 years old. She's going to transfer to a UC school here from a junior college, because I got 2 years free at the junior college. So
yeah, that's so fantastic.
And a beautiful karma, because my mother cut me out of my grandmother's trust that was meant for my daughter's education. So she was going to starve my daughter out of an education to get me to be back under her control. So I don't need that money. And I'm finding my way as a single mom to get her everything she needs. And we have a really special, high level, unique relationship, because I just am her leader and her lover and her mother, but I'm not her parent. I don't own her. She should have the title to her own inner world. I don't own that property. It's not my job to control it. I'm here to guide it. So I took a completely different take on parenting because parent is such a bad word in my mind because of all the damage that was done. So I never even
Right.
brought it into my idea of raising her.
Right. Wow, that's so interesting. So as her leader,
Mm-hmm.
how did you lead her? How did you like I
Reality.
said, like
Life
okay.
hurts. The people that are going to hurt you the most are going to be the closest people to you. Find yourself, be grounded. Like, she hasn't had a boyfriend yet. And I was
Okay.
asking her, I was like, so, are you getting to that place? She's like, no, my self-worth is so positive right now. I really want to be in this place and just make sure it's solid before I give my heart to someone.
Oh wow. Oh
I was like,
yeah.
next play on the list, please. Pull a ticket. Pull a ticket. I don't know how to be alone. I'm completely messed up. Oh, you're an asshole? Assholes,
Yeah. Come right in.
I'll do that. Um, I divorced her dad. She's been through some pain. I married my mom, unfortunately. She has had to set very strong boundaries on her dad. She has done so by her own accord. She asked to go to therapy this year, so we're in therapy for the first time.
Wow.
Um, she asked me to go to one session with her because she just wanted me to see her therapist. And so I was able to express certain concerns that I have with her. And it's just been open and wonderful. And so I think that we can only heal from the place of where reality is.
Mhm.
And the reality is that life is a function of very painful things and then very good things. And this too shall pass. That's happiness too. It'll pass. And the
Yes.
pain will pass and the happiness will pass. We all want to stay up here at this happiness goal, but wholeness is just not a perpetual state of well-being. It's going to require all of the parts. And so when she's had hard times with friends or transitions or her dad especially, we cried it out. We talked it out. We found a solution. She followed through on that solution. Some of those things worked. Some of them really hurt because they didn't get received or they weren't seen as important, and we grieved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. I'm hearing, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm also seeing like this visual of like taking action. Like it's like you're saying, you're understanding where I'm at right now. This is where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Owning that, and where do I want to get to? What action is required? And if that's therapy, if that's
right.
trying it out, if that, whatever that
For
happens to
me, in
be.
one of my books, I talk about feel, deal, heal.
Oh, tell me more.
I was not allowed my feelings. That was like, go to your room. I don't know what magical beast they thought was in my room that was going to alchemize my feelings. I looked for it everywhere. It wasn't under my bed, wasn't in
No,
my closet.
didn't see it.
Didn't see it. No magical being. No one bippity boppity booed me. So, I feel like being in her reality with her is you have to feel it first, because then you will know what you're dealing with. And then once you know what you're dealing with and how it makes you feel, then you have a plan that you can make, which is solution finding. Do you back away and give it no voice? Do you need to step in to set a boundary? What solution needs to happen to be grounded? And also, there's no rush. I always tell her, when we get limbic, and we're like up here and our head's exploding and we want to act when we're here because we haven't reached the smart part of the brain yet. I always tell her forward is a pace. It's not about how fast you're going. It's the direction. Forward is a pace. So you go forward at your pace, because it's your feelings and you're going to feel those, deal with those, and then heal those. Right. So I just think that happiness is a byproduct of achieving. I have found my greatest happiness at the achievement of even successfully working through an emotional problem or successfully, writing a book, whatever that is. But
Right.
I do believe this is the world of work and of action.
Yeah.
And if you really want to be happy here, you have to be able to take action and follow through and be responsible.
Yeah.
So what I want my daughter more than anything to understand is that responsibility is synonymous with mental health.
Oh, that's so good. Okay,
Okay?
please say that again.
Responsibility is synonymous with mental health. You will never find an irresponsible, mentally healthy or happy person.
Well, you will, and they're called victims.
Yes, and that's not the kind of happiness I'm searching for. You know,
No.
that's the unfair group of people, or the yeah, but group of people. People who are committed to that, they do find some sort of sick joy in it, but they don't elevate. They don't expand. They don't find more. There's just always, for me, this isn't fair. And it's interesting because I think people see responsibility as a drag.
Well, it's kind of like when you say, like when you said earlier that you don't use the word parent because that word means something to you. You made it mean something. And I know growing up, I was the oldest of 3. So it was my responsibility. I took that on to take care of my younger brothers so that they didn't have to go through the domestic violence and abuse, that they didn't have to see that. I would protect them from that. Yep. And so now responsibility.
It's a bad word.
Well, yeah, I made it mean violence. I made it mean protecting. I made it mean a whole bunch of things. And so I've learned that I get to give that a new meaning. But yeah, please.
Yeah. Or, you know, like when you think about, I had to change that I have to I get to.
Yes.
Right. So when you think of responsibility, I think of it more as like getting clarity. If I don't have a lot of emotional clutter everywhere and I'm taking responsibility for how I feel and how I'm going to work through that, right, then I'm going to have a cleaner house, emotional house that I'm living in. And I have my areas where I procrastinate, let's be real.
Yeah.
But whole, I feel like I have garnered the greatest feelings of happiness at the end of something I worked really, really hard for. And that feels so good that it's intoxicating to continue to find something to feel good about. That could be like yesterday. I did not want to work out, not at all, not one bit. Do you hear what I'm saying? Like I did want, and I'm like, here's, don't think, just do. I got upstairs. I'm like, I could just take a bath. And I'm like, get your damn clothes on, go downstairs.
Right.
Just do it. Don't think, just do. So I did. And afterward, I'm like, oh my God, thank God. But my God, that argument was so intense.
Right. The resistance.
I did not want to, but I knew that the greater love of myself, because I had an eating disorder. So I starved myself as a way to get away from her. And I have a bad food person up here, you know? And so I'm like, I don't want to deal with that later because that's going to be worse than not. And the workout's not going to change my body, but it changes my brain. And so I just have to go change my brain. And I loved myself more because I did it.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like it's those moments. I don't always succeed there, but those are moments of joy where I could write in my journal, like, I didn't want to, but I did.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I love
little doses of joy. I mean, little successes, something like that is just like a little success. Because if you think about it, we're always measuring ourselves, even if we didn't have overly critical or controlling parents. If you do, it's a lot worse, but we're always measuring. So I want to at least measure a little above 50% on the daily. And I also will know if I'm at 20% and I know that because I'm in pain or something else, I usually forecast for people, I'm at about a 20 today. So you need to be an 80.
Yeah.
Or you need to let me be.
Wow, you're bringing up something that's so important. It's, I mean, I think it's part of self-care, or at least it has been for me. And that forecasting, you know, when I can say to my, whoever's in my life, my husband, my kids, my virtual assistant, like the whole thing, to be able to say, okay, here's where I am today. And, I'm asking for support. That's one thing, like these high level functioning entrepreneurs. And I know you're listening to me. You know who you are.
That's right.
It's like we don't ask for help and we don't leverage the help that's in front of us. There's this thing where I'm like, my core belief is I'm not enough. So if I ask somebody for help, and I
Like
know that I know, right?
Yeah.
Right. So let me just punish and make this hard, so
Yeah,
that
I came from
I can
I'm not
prove.
allowed to ask for help. I got that. So if
Right.
I asked for help, I was bothering someone.
Right.
So then I learned not to ask for help and also learned not to receive because I would feel like I owed or I would feel guilty, like I was burdening them. I was consuming
Right.
their time.
Right.
Either coming from your perspective or mine, we overfunction.
Yeah.
And that comes from in some way being given too much responsibility for an age appropriate child, right? So all of these things for women, we can exhaust ourselves to death. And we're also going through a stage in life, most of us, where all of our hormones are changing.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. All of our hormones are changing. 10% of medical income goes to female health. 10%. And we are left alone in this world. And the moment you bring up hormones, people are like, oh, she crazy. Yeah, well, yeah, because I'm supposed to be. And where's the support? So I feel like as we're working and we're entrepreneuring and we're doing all of these things, women are so good at putting themselves last and doing all the things because it's some weird sixth sense of we have to prove we're good enough, right? And I feel a lot of that is shifting at this point. I really try to stay out of that. And I do where I'm like, where am I? What am I capable of today? What areas can I push myself in a little? And where can I give myself a break? And I try to balance myself that way. And I think asking for help is a practice. I think you have to practice it. I don't think it's a natural skill for a lot of us.
Right. Yeah, I agree. A lot of what we're talking about is practice. It's rewiring what we learned as a young child, without, before logic and reason even existed. Yeah. So, thank you so much for all these pieces of wisdom and strategies that you've been given us. I know that you have something for the audience and the listeners on top of it, like the cherry on top. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yes, I do. I did a 6-module course on toxic family, and I'm giving the first module away for free. So it's just something that's great. And I would encourage everyone to go see the TED Talk as well. It's called Not All Parents Are Good. Not all parents are bad, just that not all parents are good. And I think it's important that this topic at least be discussed because we're really not allowed to talk about the problematic character of our parents in a culturally open and safe space when you're an adult child of one. So there's lots of tools, lots of healing out there. There's so much love that you can learn to have for yourself when you start to change your life in the ways that help you to know yourself. I couldn't love someone I didn't know. So I had to get to know myself to love myself.
Yeah. That is, wow. That is profound. If you got nothing else out of this talk, to know yourself in order to love yourself. Wow, that's really good. What would you say, and that's a great piece of advice, what would you say is one piece of advice that you wish you had received when you were younger, in your journey, or maybe starting out in your journey, that could help someone
Children
right now?
often are telling the truth, but they are not believed over their parents. So I would have loved for someone to have said, honey, you're not crazy. I see it too. And instead I would get, well, she didn't mean it that way. She couldn't have. She's your mom. I'm sure she loves you. I know she loves you. So I felt insane. I felt like what
Right.
I was seeing, I saw other people see it, and then they would be like, so I think that we just need to validate what's real. And I think people have a hard time. But if someone could have just said, I see it, what I see you, I see
Uh-huh.
you, would have been wonderful. So unseen to unstoppable. Um, it would have been nice. And I did finally at 16, I had a therapist who saw me, but
Yeah.
and that was life changing for me. Because of her, I'm a therapist today. That's what it means to be seen.
Wow.
So when you see something and it's a scary thing to see, don't step away from it. Validate the person that you see it happening to as real.
Yeah. That's powerful. So powerful,
Mm.
there's nothing left to say. So good. I appreciate you taking the time to be with me today and speak on this summit. So, there's this quote from Brian Clemmer that says, be a maniac about giving away the thing you want most. And if you're listening and you want to be seen, just like you said,
That's
go
right. See
see
it
other
forward.
people. See yourself first and foremost,
Yeah.
and see other people and tell them they're seen, validate them. Like, that's so good.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you can get to a place, no matter who it is, where I'm like, dang, my family's really missing out. Like, I am living such the best life right now. And not because of them, but in spite of them. And I did that. That's a success for me, that I didn't let the people closest to me eat me alive and bring me down. Because I was really at some crossroads in my life where, thank God, I didn't take those other turns. Because
Right.
from what I came from, I shouldn't be here doing this today. I shouldn't. Right. So there's so much more strength in the human spirit than you can even imagine. And you don't know that until you have no other choice but to tap into it. And in a very grateful way, I was left no other choice.
Mm.
That my
Mm.
survival became completely dependent on looking at that pain and figuring out how to get out of it. So it's scary, but there's a cushion in there if you're willing to fall. Like if you leap, that net will appear. So I've never done the brave thing bravely, but I've always done the brave thing. I've just never
That's
done it
good.
bravely. Okay, so
Yeah.
don't wait for bravery. Just do it wide-eyed and petrified. You'll land.
Yes.
You will land.
Yeah. And then when you do, that's when the confidence and the courage is,
Yes. You're
yeah.
like, and then it increases because then you feel more confident to be brave again.
Yeah. And that's what you're doing. You're gathering evidence to show just how brave you are. And those times where, I used to say, like, I'm in the back corner of a back room hiding, and then I would put myself out there. Somebody would look at me wrong, and I'd go back to the corner further back in. I was telling my subconscious, I was finding evidence and self-sabotaging to say, see, I am not good enough.
Yes. See, look at that evidence I just found.
Yeah,
Oh, I did
just
that for
created.
years. I did that for years. And I think it's just part of the process. I think when I see people that don't have as much trauma, I also notice that their EQ isn't quite as high.
Mm,
So as much as I always admired, like, sort of like, oh, you're so like innocent, you're so untainted, but resilience is lower and EQ is lower. And I would rather be me, because when trauma hits, I am like, you should see my skill set of trauma tools, right? I would hate to have had sort of a charmed life and then trauma hits later in life and I got no skills.
right.
That would be terrifying. I would sort of rather have what I have and be able to have a really good relationship with my gut instincts, or to be very sensing and empathetic of others and not overlook anything. I would rather overthink than underthink. I really would. I really would. Now, if I could have a superpower for one day, I would just love one day to know what it's like for the water to just go off of Doug's back. I can't even imagine. I feel every drip. It goes into my skin. I just for one day would just want to know what it's like.
Yeah.
But I think that trauma breeds a high EQ if you're willing to do the work. Otherwise, it breeds you to be the abuser that you were taught to be or raised to be, right? But having a high EQ will get you so much further in life than having a high IQ. What does Maya Angelou say? People will never remember like what your bank account was. They're going to remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
Like EQ is everything because it is what makes us bond or not. It's what makes us feel seen or not. So love your pain because it's increasing and alchemizing your emotional intelligence.
Wow. Thank you.
You're
Well,
so
I
welcome.
see you, Dr. Sherry.
I see you, beautiful
And
Karen.
you know, if for those listening, if you spot it, you got it. So I see power, resilience, peace, grace, and love in you. And
Thank
thank
you
you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thank you.